What happens when one of the most controversial royals meets one of late-night television's most ruthless hosts? You won't believe what unfolds when Prince Harry sits down with Stephen Colbert for what was supposed to be a routine promotional interview. The explosive confrontation that erupted has left Hollywood reeling, social media in chaos, and viewers questioning everything they thought they knew about both men. The Late Show studio buzzed with its usual pre-show energy as crew members made final adjustments to the lighting and sound equipment. Prince Harry had arrived earlier that evening, looking composed in his tailored navy suit, ready to promote his latest charitable initiative. What nobody in that studio could have predicted was that this seemingly routine celebrity interview would devolve into one of the most shocking confrontations in late-night television history. As the cameras rolled and the familiar theme music faded, Colbert delivered his opening monologue with his characteristic blend of sharp wit and political commentary. The audience laughed on cue, completely unaware that they were about to witness something that would dominate headlines for weeks to come. When Colbert finally introduced his guest, the applause was warm and welcoming. Prince Harry emerged from backstage with that practiced royal wave, settling into the guest chair with the confidence of someone who had navigated countless interviews before. "Your Royal Highness," Colbert began, with an exaggerated bow that drew chuckles from the audience. "Welcome back to the show, though I have to say, calling you Your Royal Highness feels a bit odd, given your current, shall we say, complicated relationship with the institution." Harry's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, but he maintained his composure. "Well, Stephen, I think we both know that titles are just words. What matters is the work we're doing and the impact we're making." "The work," Colbert replied, his tone already carrying an edge that regular viewers would recognize as a warning sign. "Speaking of work, I'm curious about this new initiative of yours. Mental health awareness is certainly important, but some critics have suggested that you and Meghan have turned personal trauma into a rather lucrative business venture. Care to comment on that?" The question hung in the air like a loaded weapon. Harry's jaw clenched slightly, and for a moment the practiced media training seemed to falter. "I think those critics," he said carefully, "fundamentally misunderstand what we're trying to accomplish. This isn't about money, Stephen. It's about helping people who are struggling with the same issues we've faced." Of course," Colbert nodded with mock understanding. "But let's be honest here, Harry. You've signed multi-million-dollar deals with Netflix and Spotify. You've written a best-selling memoir that exposed intimate family details, and now you're launching another venture. At what point does helping people start to look like helping yourself?" The audience grew noticeably quieter, sensing the shift in atmosphere. Harry leaned forward slightly, his media-trained composure beginning to crack. "I find it interesting, Stephen, that you question my motives when you've built your entire career on making jokes about other people's pain and suffering. At least I'm trying to make a positive difference." Colbert's eyebrows shot up, and a dangerous smile played at the corners of his mouth. This was exactly the kind of pushback he thrived on, the moment when his guests revealed their true nature under pressure. Oh, that's rich coming from someone who spent years complaining about media intrusion, while simultaneously courting that same media at every opportunity. "You can't have it both ways, Your Highness." The tension in the studio was now palpable. Camera operators adjusted their positions, sensing they were capturing something extraordinary. Harry's hands gripped the arms of his chair, and when he spoke again, his voice carried a harder edge. "You know what, Stephen? I came here tonight to talk about mental health, about helping veterans and families in crisis. But instead you want to play these games, make these accusations. This is exactly the kind of toxic behavior that drove us away from the UK in the first place." Colbert leaned back in his chair, his expression shifting from playful antagonism to something more calculating and cold. "Toxic behavior. That's what you call asking legitimate questions about your public actions? How very royal of you." But what happened next transformed this already tense exchange into something far more explosive. The studio lights seemed to burn hotter as Colbert leaned forward, his famous smirk morphing into something more predatory. "You know, Harry, since you brought up the UK, let's talk about that. Your grandmother served her country for 70 years, never once airing family grievances in public. Yet here you are, barely 2 years after her death, still milking that victim narrative. How do you think she'd feel about you turning the royal family into your personal cash cow?" The audience gasped audibly. Even by Colbert's standards, this was brutal territory. Harry's face flushed red, and for the first time since sitting down, his royal composure completely shattered. "Don't you dare," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "Don't you dare bring my grandmother into this. You didn't know her. You have no right to speak about what she would or wouldn't think." But Colbert wasn't backing down. If anything, he seemed energized by Harry's reaction, like a shark sensing blood in the water. "Oh, but I think I do have that right, Your Highness. See, unlike you, I don't hide behind palace walls when I have something to say. Your grandmother represented duty, service, keeping private matters private. You represent the exact opposite of everything she stood for." The words hit Harry like physical blows. His hands were trembling now, and when he spoke, his voice carried decades of suppressed anger and pain. "You want to talk about duty and service? Let's talk about it. I served 2 tours in Afghanistan while you were here making jokes about politicians. I've dedicated my life to helping wounded veterans, to causes that actually matter. What have you done besides tear people down for entertainment?" Colbert's laugh was cold and mocking. "What have I done? I've held powerful people accountable. I've asked the hard questions that others are too polite or too scared to ask. Like right now, I'm asking why a man who claims to want privacy has spent the last 3 years doing nothing but seeking attention. I'm asking why someone who talks about mental health seems so comfortable destroying his own family's mental well-being." The studio fell into an eerie silence. Even the camera operators seemed frozen, unsure whether they should keep rolling or intervene. Harry stood up abruptly, towering over Colbert's desk, his entire body radiating barely contained fury. "You think this is holding me accountable? This is harassment. This is exactly the kind of predatory behavior that killed my mother." The mention of Princess Diana sent shockwaves through the room. Colbert's eyes widened for just a moment, but instead of backing down, he doubled down with ruthless precision. "Your mother? Really? You're going to hide behind that tragedy too? How convenient that every time someone challenges you, out comes the Diana card. She died in a car accident, Harry, not from media criticism. But you've spent your entire adult life using her death as a shield against any legitimate scrutiny." What happened next stunned everyone in the studio. Harry's face went completely white, then flushed crimson with rage. His voice, when it came, was barely controlled. "How dare you minimize what happened to her? How dare you sit there in your comfortable chair making millions off other people's misery and tell me how I should grieve my mother?" Colbert straightened in his chair, his expression shifting to something even more calculating. "I'm not telling you how to grieve, Harry. I'm telling you to stop using that grief as a weapon against anyone who dares to question your choices. Your mother faced real persecution from the media, real invasion of privacy. You court that same media every chance you get, then cry victim when they don't write exactly what you want them to write." The audience was completely silent now, some covering their mouths in shock at what they were witnessing. This had gone far beyond a typical celebrity interview gone wrong. This was character assassination playing out in real time, and Harry was visibly struggling to maintain any semblance of control. "You don't know what you're talking about," Harry said, his voice shaking with emotion. "You don't know what it's like to have your every move scrutinized, to have lies written about your wife, to have your children threatened by the same people who destroyed your family." But Colbert wasn't finished. He sensed his guest was at the breaking point. and with the instincts of a predator, he moved in for what would prove to be the final devastating blow. "You know what I think, Harry?" Colbert said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow carried more menace than shouting. "I think you're exactly like your father, weak, entitled, and completely unable to handle criticism. The only difference is that Charles waited until he was king to show his true colors. You couldn't even wait that long." The comparison to his father hit Harry like a lightning bolt. His entire body went rigid, and for a moment, the studio was so quiet you could hear the hum of the cameras. When Harry finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried a fury that made everyone in the room take a step back. "What did you just say to me?" Colbert smiled, sensing he'd found the perfect pressure point. "You heard me. You're just like Charles, petulant, self-absorbed, and convinced that the world owes you something. At least he had the decency to wait until after your grandmother died to start his reign of incompetence. You started your tantrum while she was still alive." Harry's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "You have absolutely no idea what you're talking about. You sit here in your ivory tower making jokes about people's lives, and you think that gives you the right to judge my family, to judge me. It's not judgment, Harry. It's observation," Colbert replied with mock reasonableness. "And what I observe is a man who had everything handed to him, threw it all away for a Hollywood actress, and then spent years whining about the consequences. Your brother William, he's actually doing the job. He's serving his country without constant drama. But you're just another celebrity now trying to stay relevant." The mention of William was the final straw. Harry stepped closer to Colbert's desk, his voice rising to a roar that echoed through the studio. "Don't you dare bring my brother into this. You don't know anything about our relationship, about what we've been through together. William and I have always had each other's backs, and that hasn't changed." Colbert's eyebrows shot up with theatrical surprise. "Really? Is that why he wasn't at your last big media appearance? Is that why he didn't defend you when you accused the family of racism? Face it, Harry. You burned that bridge just like you burned all the others." The audience was completely silent now, many looking around nervously as if they wanted to leave but couldn't. This had gone so far beyond entertainment that it felt like witnessing a public breakdown. Harry was visibly shaking, his face cycling. Harry was visibly shaking, his face cycling between anguish and fury. He tried to speak, but his words caught in his throat. The silence in the room was so heavy it seemed to smother the air. The audience, normally quick to laugh or clap at Colbert's jabs, now sat frozen, unsure whether they were witnessing a talk show or the unraveling of a man on live television. Finally, Harry steadied himself, his voice breaking but resolute. "You sit there pretending you know me, pretending you understand what it's like to lose a mother to relentless media persecution, to have your wife hounded day and night, to watch your family torn apart in headlines. But you don't know. You don't know the first thing about what it costs to survive that." Colbert folded his hands on the desk, his expression calm but razor-sharp. "And yet here you are, Harry, on television, promoting yourself again. If privacy and healing were truly your goals, wouldn't you be anywhere but here? Wouldn't you be with your family instead of monetizing your pain in front of millions?" The words landed like a dagger. Harry's chest rose and fell sharply as he fought to hold himself together. "You think this is about money? You think this is about fame? I came here to talk about helping veterans, about supporting families struggling with mental health. But all you've done is twist it into another circus. That's on you, not me." Colbert leaned back, a thin smile playing on his lips. "No, Harry, that's on you. Because at the end of the day, you chose this stage. You chose the spotlight. And now that the questions aren't flattering, you want to call it an ambush. Maybe what you really can't handle is the truth." The audience shifted uncomfortably. Some murmured under their breath. Others sat stiffly, staring at the stage as though watching a car crash in slow motion. Harry pressed his lips together, his eyes burning with rage and hurt. He looked down at the floor, then back at Colbert, with a stare that could cut glass. "This interview is over," he said, his voice low and final. He ripped off his microphone, the sound crackling through the speakers, and stood up. For a moment, no one moved. Then the audience erupted into a confused mix of gasps, whispers, and scattered applause. Colbert remained seated, his face a mask of composure tinged with smug satisfaction. He tapped his papers on the desk, glanced at the cameras, and with a chillingly casual tone said, "Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. Prince Harry." Harry walked off stage without another word. The cameras stayed fixed on Colbert as the band fumbled into the closing notes, the studio awash in stunned silence. Viewers across the world sat in disbelief, knowing they had just witnessed one of the most explosive and uncomfortable interviews in late-night history.